Okay, thank you. We are now out of executive session. This is again the PEG Access Ad hoc Committee. Do I have any motions to move forward from behind? Clark.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the candidate discussed during executive session and request that staff contact the applicants with the name to be disclosed once applicants have been contacted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, and with that, we're going to close our ad hoc PEG committee meeting. I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Just to recap so that people understand what occurred. So we went into executive session to discuss the applicants, and we came out of executive session with a decision that we voted on. We did not share the name at this time because of the privacy of all those who applied, and out of respect of those who applied, we were going to have staff contact them individually, privately, and make them aware of who has been selected. So just to give full clarity of the process. With that, I see no other business for this committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Meeting's adjourned.
Okay, can members take their seats so we can get started? We, no, not necessarily. Can you close the door? Okay, we're going to get started. Chief Cox has another meeting he has to get to. So, welcome everyone to the Monday, January 6th Caucus and work session of the Albany Common Council. It's our work session prior to our regular meeting. With that, Mr. Jimenez, please call the roll.
Adams, Nanane, Bowen, Clark, Farrell,
Here.
Flynn is absent, Frederick is absent, Hoey, Johnson, Keegan,
Here.
Kimbrough,
Here.
Love is absent, Robinson is here, just not in the room at the moment, Conti, and Zamer.
Here.
7 present in the room, however 8 total here. We are also joined by Council President Corey Ellis, City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson in the other room, Deputy Corporation Counsel Brett Williams, Research Counsel Jake Eisen, Legislative Director Brian Jimenez, and Junior Policy Analyst Alyssa Kamara.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to start by welcoming back Mr. Conti. Welcome back. Thank you. And so we'll start with Chief Cox, who's sharing a bit of information with us regarding the officer-related shooting from the other day. So, just whenever you're ready to start.
Good evening. So on Sunday, January 5th, yesterday, 2025, at approximately 7:49 a.m., the Albany Police Department responded to 150D 3rd Avenue for a domestic-related incident involving a handgun. The call was ultimately initiated when a young male, a 20-year-old, walked into our South Station and reported that his mother was being menaced by her boyfriend who had a handgun. The basics of that call, as we ultimately learned, were that her boyfriend, Luis Rivera, who was born on 8/15 of 1985, was in a possession of a handgun, had menaced his girlfriend, and that included brandishing that handgun, pointing it at the girlfriend, which was the mother of the young man who walked in, and at least at one point pointing it at her and pulling the trigger, which did not result in the gun firing, but he did pull that trigger of that handgun. That young male was very concerned about the welfare of his mom and also 3 other siblings that were in the house at the time, which we later learned were a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Officers responded to the residence. They prepared to call out the residents to secure the scene, make sure that everyone's welfare was okay. As they were doing that, They noticed that there was some activity in the house, and ultimately an adult female and an adult male exited. The adult female was identified to be the victim, that young man's mother, and the adult male was later identified to be Mr. Rivera. As they were engaged with both the female and the male, the female wound up ultimately coming over to the officers to their car. They were able to secure her to safety. While they were trying to engage and talk to the male to get him to also to show his hands and ultimately surrender, a second juvenile male, who was the 17-year-old, did come out of the house. He came over to safety, and they were able to get him to safety. When he came over to the officer's unit, he also told the officers that that adult male was in possession of a handgun. As the officers were continuing to try to engage with that adult male, he was continuing to go in and out of the apartment. And at one point, when he eventually exited the apartment, he came out rather quickly in an agitated fashion. He got into what I will describe as a shooter stance, raised his hands as he was pointing a gun at the officers, in the appearance that he was pointing a gun at the officers. At that point, one of the officers utilized his department-issued shotgun, which he was covering for the safety of himself, the fellow officers, and at that point, the female victim and her juvenile 17-year-old son, and he fired one round at Mr. Rivera. That round did not strike Mr. Rivera, and Mr. Rivera's initial reaction was to drop his hands, drop out of that stance. However, he then went back into a shooter stance again, and again raised his hands as if he was about to fire from a gun towards the officers and the victims of the incident. At this point, the officer had reassessed the situation, fired a second round from his department-issued shotgun, and this time struck Mr. Rivera in the upper thigh. The officers at that time approached Mr. Rivera. They took him into custody. They rendered first aid, including putting a tourniquet on Mr. Rivera's leg. They called for EMS, and Mr. Rivera was transported to the hospital for medical treatment. The injuries to Mr. Rivera were non-life-threatening. We ultimately executed a search warrant of the residence, and the loaded handgun that Mr. Rivera did possess earlier in the incident was located inside of the residence. While we're in the early stages of the investigation, the totality of the circumstances, early review of the video, as well as statements from the victims, certainly appears the officer acted in a manner where he was in fear for his life, the life of his fellow officers, and the life of the two victims that were at hand outside of the apartment at that moment. The two other juveniles at that moment of the incident were still inside of the residence. They were unharmed. We were able to secure them after the incident. As you all may have seen yesterday, we released a small clip of the body camera from the incident yesterday to try to be as transparent as possible. Mr. Rivera, at the time of this incident, is on federal probation, and he's on federal probation for a gun charge. He was ultimately charged yesterday with a number of charges stemming from the domestic incident and from the incident for menacing on the officer. So he was charged with criminal possession of a weapon second, attempted assault first, acting in a manner dangerous to children less than 16, and menacing in the second degree.
Okay, so that's preliminary, kind of from the press conference. It's the information that was put out there. So members have any questions? Ms. Keegan?
Thank you, and thank you, Chief Cox, for making the time to meet with us this evening. I am very well aware that domestic incidents are one of the most challenging incidents for our officers to respond to, and they are also one of the top leading causes of death and injury in the field for officers across the country, as a result of just not knowing what you're walking into when responding to those incidents. The one thing that concerned me in reading about this was the fact that there were 2 children still in the home at the time that police opened fire on the suspect. Do we have any idea if they had that information at the time, and whether they knew if those children were potentially in the line of fire when they chose to engage with the subject in that way?
So I think we still have to find out what exactly the officers knew as far as where those 2 children were. As far as from what I could tell of the video, those children were not in the line of fire at the time. I can attest to what I saw in the video. As you said, they are extremely dangerous calls to go on. Officers only have the knowledge of what they have, and much of what happens on a call is dictated many times by the person who's caused that incident and is offending. And I want to make sure that we do a full and thorough investigation, but I can certainly tell you from what I saw that Mr. Rivera, he drove much of what the response was.
Thank you.
Mr. Holy.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I just want to thank you for being transparent, for getting in touch with leadership, when this occurred, and also for working with the CPRB. I think, it shows that we're open, and we'll do a full investigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none?
All right. Thank
you,
you all.
Chief.
Appreciate it.
Okay, just on to our agenda. For this meeting, we will have a public hearing. Ordinance 279124 to start. Mr. Nani's affordable and inclusionary housing ordinance. Then next, on to for meeting minutes, I'll be offering the December 16th, 2024 meeting minutes for approval. Then on to local laws. We have Ms. Carroll's ethics, Code of Ethics and Board of Ethics, Local Law F 2024. Will be taken up as amended. Then on to ordinance 1962-24, under ordinances held by Ms. Keegan. It's in relation to the charter, nuisance abatement, and it's correcting some definitions to match what's in state law. We'll be moving forward with that. Then, pending the outcome of the hearing, this will be taken on ordinance 279124 as amended. That's Mr. Anani's ordinance on affordable inclusionary housing in relation to the USDO. Then, on to resolutions introduced by myself. The resolution of the council appointing Mr. Conti as a board member of the Law Street bid. And we'll be voting on that. And then lastly, resolutions held 138, 122, 24R by me, previously Mr. Narrows, in relation to the seeker for Washington Park. Did we receive, Mr. Williams, we were waiting to hear back from some state agencies, or?
Well, we didn't hear back from those agencies, but by law, if they don't respond within 30 days, then we're allowed to deem ourselves the
Okay.
lead agency.
Okay, so
And I should say that 30 days has elapsed, so we're good to go.
okay, so we'll be moving forward with that. 138, 122, 24 resolution. So that is actually it for the agenda. Anyone have anything else? Got a couple more minutes before we start the meeting. What'd you say? I can't hear you. Oh, yes, right. Yes. That's right, and we'll be doing the commissioner deeds for Mr. Conti. Commissioner deeds for Mr. Conti. Hey, DJ. So, I pick. We're at time, Mr. President, so whenever you're ready.
Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome back. We call to order today to start our Albany Common Council meeting today, January 6, 2025. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Present.
Anani. Valorant. Here. Clark.
Here.
Conti. Farrell. Here. Flynn. Frederick. Hoey.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Keegan.
Here.
Kimbrough.
Here.
Love. Robinson.
Here.
Zamer.
Here.
11 present, 4 absent.
Thank you. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start off the new year with Common Council. We have a public hearing. I'm doing this public hearing. Any speaker who comes to the podium and speaks upon only this issue. Unlike public comment, after you speak, Common Council members can ask you questions on your thoughts on this public hearing. So you will have 5 minutes to speak upon this issue. Is there anyone signed up for a public hearing? Well, read the public hearing first, please. Madam Clerk.
A notice is hereby given that the Common Council public hearing will be held on January 6, 2025 at 7 p.m. and will be held in advance of the potential passage of the following ordinance. This meeting will be an in-person meeting in the Common Council chambers, City Hall, and will be held on the following matter. Ordinance 279124, an ordinance amending Chapter 375, City of Albany Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to incentivizing the construction of affordable and inclusionary housing. Documents may be inspected between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday in the office of the Common Council, 24 Eagle Street, room 206, Albany, New York, 12207. Efforts will also be made to make documents available for viewing online. This public hearing will be held pursuant to guidelines established in the Open Meetings Law, and anyone wishing to be heard can submit written comments at commoncouncil@albanyny.gov or provide in-person testimony on the ordinance before the Common Council for consideration. The public hearing will be live streamed on our YouTube page. We encourage all interested parties to submit written comments by January 6, 2025. Anyone wishing to be heard will have an opportunity to be heard at the above stated time and location.
Anyone signed up for?
No one signed up.
So seeing there's no one signed up and no interest in parties for nice music, brother. We will. This public hearing is being closed this evening. Now we move on to our regular agenda item of public comment. During public comment period, you have 5 minutes to speak upon any issue you wish to speak upon. During that time, council members cannot address you. Council members cannot answer any of your questions. It is your time to speak. Council members, if they choose to do so, will do so at a later time in the agenda to comment. You have 5 minutes. You will see a green light means go. Yellow light means you have 1 minute remaining on your comment, and the red light means conclude your comment. So with that being said, can the clerk call the first speaker?
Daryl McGrath. Just press the white strip.
Good evening. It's not usually too hard to hear me. My name is Daryl McGrath. I own and live in 6 Irving Street. I used to say that I own and occupy it, but I realize that sounds like we have a siege mentality on my street. We do feel besieged, however, by short-term rentals in our neighborhood, and it's the beginning of a new year, and I am here
Your mic was off just because that line, for whatever reason, is causing some noise, both in the chambers and probably online as well. As for everything else, we are aware of the noise being an issue, or the sound not coming through fairly well.
I would add that it flared up a little bit this afternoon, and while we try to fix these things as quickly as possible, especially on meeting nights, we try to avoid making major changes, because if it were to start working less well, that would be worse for the transparency.
It's possible too that if you speak directly into the mic, a little bit closer, it might help the audio online. We'll just play around with some of the levels inside the chambers as well.
Yes, Mr. Ellis, how are you? My name's Tom Ellis. I live in Albany on North Pine Avenue. I have a number of topics tonight. One is I'm very pleased that the city now has a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on most of the streets. It's going to take some getting used to. Another thing I've noticed is that along Western Avenue near the Eagle Point School, there is a school zone there and some signs. And the flashing light indicating that a driver is in a school zone is on 24/7. So even at like 10 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning or on a Sunday or a holiday, it's on. And I think that creates confusion as to what the actual speed limit is at that time of day. I've noticed elsewhere in Albany the lights are only on during like the designated school hours. So I think that needs to be corrected or fixed. Finally, I may have some good news for the city on your finances. I was talking to a friend of mine who works for the Department of Motor Vehicles Governor's Traffic Safety Committee a couple of days ago. And he said that he's familiar with Albany's, and he said that the city is obtaining nowhere near as much money as it could through this program to paint the crosswalks in the city of Albany. So not only is the city eligible for it, but the city school district is eligible for these funds. I'll be glad to give you his name and contact information later in the meeting if you want. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about water fluoridation. As I'm sure many of you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been selected by the President-elect to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Whether he's going to be appointed or not, I don't know, and I don't know if anybody else does. He has support. He has lots of people who don't like him and some people who hate his guts. And he's indicated that if he is appointed, that he's going to try to end water fluoridation in the United States. Whether he succeeds or not with that, I think that the city of Albany should reverse the vote that you took in February to approve water fluoridation. I think Mr. Hoey made a promise on behalf of the city council, and I'd like to see that promise honored. And finally, earlier today, a new anti-water fluoridation study was published. I haven't seen it yet. I only heard about it about an hour and a half ago. It was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics. This study was conducted by scientists from the National Institute of Health's National Toxicology Program. And what they did is so this was published today. They conducted a meta-analysis of 74 epidemiological studies examining the link between children's IQ and fluoride exposures. And they found that the more fluoride pregnant women and young children are exposed to, the greater the decrease in the child's IQ. I hope to have I'm sure I'll have a copy of that study for you at your next meeting. Anyways, thank you very much. I hope everybody's had a good year, and it's nice to have a real old-fashioned winter again.
We have no one further signed up for tonight's public comment period, so it's being closed. We'll move on to approval of minutes from previous meetings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer the December 16th of 2024 meeting minutes for approval.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Moving on to considerations of local laws. Ms. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice local law F of 2024 and ask for its passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the local law?
A local law creating a new chapter 50, Ethics of the Code of the City of Albany by establishing a code of ethics for the City of Albany and the Board of Ethics.
Is there discussion on this local law? Ms. Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank our staff and Corp Council and the Law Committee for working through this. Obviously, the state of New York has a robust ethics law that does oversee us in the city, but it is important for us as a city to have our own ethics section of law and our own ethics board. So really appreciate the work on this, and also a nod to Councilmember Conti, who has joined us again, whose initial work was the basis of this. So it's not the most exciting thing to work through, but it is rather important. So just huge thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Mr. Conti?
Thank you. One of my disappointments when I left 3 years ago was that I wasn't able to get this done. I did have a comprehensive ethics law most of my term probably. So I want to congratulate Councilmember Farrell and Councilmember Keegan also for getting it going and finally adopting something. So very happy to be able to vote for this tonight.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none? Clerk, please call the roll.
Adams,
Yes.
Valorant,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Clark,
Yes.
Conti, Farrell,
Yes.
Flynn, Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Robinson,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Zamer,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
11 in affirmative.
Local law passes. Report to standing committees. No report? All right. Okay. Moving to considerations of ordinances. Ms. Keegan?
I notice ordinance 196224 and ask for its passage via roll call vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Article 8, Public Nuisance Abatement of Chapter 255, Peace and Good Order of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to correcting definitions to match state law.
Any discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams,
Yes.
Valorant,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Conti, Farrell,
Yes.
Hoey,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Kimbrough,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Zamer,
Yes.
11 in the affirmative.
Ordinance passes. Kimbrough, you want to move with Mr. Nani's or?
Yes.
Oh, he is here? Mr. Nani, you're on. We're under ordinance under consideration. It's your ordinance, Mr. Nani.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 2791-24 and ask for its introduction and passage.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375, City of Albany Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to incentivizing the construction of affordable and inclusionary housing.
Discussion on this ordinance. Mr. Nani?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep it brief. Again, the city of Albany, we're in a housing crisis, and I think it's important that while we pass laws particularly to make sure that developers are creating affordable housing, it's also important that we also give some type of incentives to developers to create more affordable housing. No matter where you live in the city of Albany, whether it's in the South End or Buckingham Pond neighborhood, there are individuals who are struggling with housing, and I think that this council has led tremendously over the past couple of years to continue to figure out ways that we can put a dent in the affordable housing crisis. So again, is a step in the right direction. I commend all my colleagues for supporting this. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to thank Councilmember Anane for putting this legislation together, but it's very important for people to understand as we're trying to tackle the issue of housing here in the city of Albany, that we must be well-rounded in our approaches to addressing the issue. So that means addressing the inclusionary zoning, but also now providing those types of incentives to allow for more development to happen, to increase demand, increase supply here in the city of Albany. The changes in the language here in the legislation, again, it just focuses more on making sure that development is smart. We're making sure that we're maximizing space, and we're making sure that we are spreading it to different neighborhoods to allow everyone to benefit from these different types of incentives. So again, thank you to Councilmember Anane, and I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Councilmember Anane for working on this and getting this over the hurdle. I know we have made some compromises to get this to the floor today, so I appreciate his willingness to work with the planning committee on that. I also think it's important that we work on these incentives. Unfortunately, we haven't had any developers take these incentives in the last few years, but it does not mean that we can't keep focusing on trying to come up with new creative ways to come up with more incentives. So I think this is a good incentive to try to encourage developers to take on building additional affordable units. It helps reduce the cost for them to build, and hopefully we'll have some more developers take these on. So thank you, Councilmember Anane, and all of the council members that worked on getting this to committee and getting it to the floor. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I echo the sentiments of my colleagues and thanking Mr. Anane for putting this piece of legislation forward and garnering the support for it. This ordinance is a bold step in addressing one of our greatest challenges facing our city, which is access to affordable housing. It lays the groundwork for a more inclusive community, ensuring that everyone, regardless of income, has the opportunity to live and thrive in the city of Albany. By incentivizing affordable housing and sustainable development, this legislation strikes a balance between growth and equity. It encourages innovation while keeping our city's future at the forefront. This is more than policy. It is a statement of our values. It is about fairness, opportunity, and building a city where everyone belongs. And again, thank you to Councilman Anane and all of my colleagues for your support of this legislation.
No further discussion. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes.
Anane.
Yes.
Valorant.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Clark.
Yes.
Conti. Farrell.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Hoey.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Keegan.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Robinson.
Yes.
Zamer.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
12 in the affirmative.
Ordinance passes. Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. President. I know this resolution, well, we're done with the ordinances.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on, there you go. Okay. This resolution, 1/11/25R, and ask for its passage.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council appointing Richard Conti as the board member of the Lark Street Area Business Improvement District Management Association.
Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams.
Yes.
Anane.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Valorant.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Clark,
Yes.
Conti, Farrell,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Zamer.
Yes.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Any other resolutions held, Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I noticed it's a held resolution, Resolution 138, 122, 24R, and ask for its passage.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the Common Council declaring itself lead agency for the State Environmental Quality Review of the Washington Park Playground Project and issuing a negative declaration.
Discussion on this resolution. Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Adams,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Anani,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Valorant,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Clark,
Yes.
Conti,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Farrell,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Kimbrough,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Zamer.
Yes, co-sponsor.
12 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rest of the resolution on the agenda held.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I notice the following persons be hereby appointed for the Commissioner of Deeds for the City of Albany, New York, for their term ending in December 31st, 2026, and waive the reading of the names.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Miscellaneous or unfinished business. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to talk about Robert Brooks because we had a family come in here and complain about a loss that they experienced, and it was on a local level. And for me to see that video and as a human being, I've heard many stories about people's experience, whether it be in state incarceration or locally. And the sad part was everything that was shared with me, I saw it in that video. And I'm gonna say it again. Every person that sits behind a desk in this building has power and has a voice that they can use. I was on vacation and I went to Facebook and I saw one of my friends say how uncomfortable she felt for her son. And I picked up the phone and I called up there and I put my words behind it. And I just think that, people end up incarcerated generally for a reason, but they still have rights. And, for a group of people to be allowed to conduct themselves in the manner that I saw, I'm wondering why I haven't seen charges come forth. I'm wondering why the whole book hasn't been thrown at them. And I'm bothered by the time it's taken, because what I saw in that video, I didn't see a person fighting back. I saw a person that was hopeless, helpless, and basically in a position where they couldn't do anything. It's one thing for 10 people to jump on someone who has their hands free. You can defend yourself. But when you sit in there handcuffed, and this stuff is happening more than that video shows, and I don't know what we can do, but I think that it's important that we put our voices behind those incidents, because if it was one of our family members or if it was somebody that we knew, everybody would have a problem with it. And it's hard to even say what I want to say without coming off the wrong way. But
messages have to be sent out. People have to understand that there is accountability, and we cannot have systems where we're letting COs investigate COs. You know, there's so much technology in this world, and I'm so grateful that they had chest cams, because without the chest cams, it would just be his family saying what happened. And a lot of times what they don't understand is those people that are incarcerated, they do their best to get that information out of there. And, you know, I feel, you know, Amin Nixon, that was my guy. And when I was watching Mr. Brooks' situation, I couldn't help but think about somebody that I love, somebody that I care about, somebody that I miss, somebody that I know left kids here that are going to have to grow up without their father, and they're going to have this anger and resentment towards law enforcement. This stuff has been going on too long. It's been green lighted for too long, and it's time that as elected officials throughout the state should have been in an uproar, because what I saw, if you know, I'm gonna say it, if anybody ever treated my brother like that, I will throw everything away to make sure that I defend my brother, because nobody deserves treatment like that, especially not in a situation where it's so much that they have to deal with being incarcerated. So I just want to reiterate that you do have a voice. As I said before, in another situation, they weren't treating a friend of mine the way that they were supposed to, and I got on the phone and I made a phone call, and only later to find out that the person that I talked to did everything that she said that she would do. She said, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna check on him, I'm gonna make sure if he's not getting his meds, if whatever, I'm gonna handle it. And you know, I left it in God's hands, and I took her word on face value. And the receiver call to find out that that lady did everything that she said, it let me know that it's good people out there that if we pick up the phone and if we put words to it, they're going to respond. But you know, a lot of times people think nobody cares about those people up there, because a lot of times people don't have the means to travel up and to go through all you have to go through. If anybody has ever visited a loved one that's incarcerated, it's a lot that you have to go through. And if you see what they put us through, you can just imagine what the other people are going through. So I'm not here to throw stones at every correctional officer, because there's some correctional officers that I know stand up strong and tall. But it's hard when you are in a situation where you can't speak your mind, and we don't have those restraints. So I was saddened that a human being had to go through that. You know, I wouldn't care what color he was. If he was green, I would have been upset. If it was an avatar, I would have been upset, because that's just uncool. Nobody should have to experience that. And you know, I hate to, in the first meeting of the year, to bring up something so negative, but this is a reality. This is normalcy, and for a lot of people that I know that are incarcerated. And you know, let me share this with you. It's some people that never get in those situations, right? But just the thought of seeing that, just the thought of hearing it, you know, that is trauma as well. So please, I encourage all my colleagues to put your voice behind, if people reach out to you. You know, if people reach out to you, please take those calls serious and genuinely, because this stuff is really happening. And you know, like I said, I have some CO friends that share with me what they don't like that they have to see. So as from the video that we saw of Mr. Brooks, this is really a terror that people have to live under while they are incarcerated. So I'm once again asking people to put their voice behind the people, to send a message that is not to be tolerated nor accepted. Thank you.
Further?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. We adjourn.
Let me get my piece.